I would like to show you another beautiful game. So I played the black pieces here, e4, e6, f4, and d5. This is the French defense. As always, I'm not gonna talk a lot about the opening theory, but instead I will just make a pause here, and I need to mention the famous words of the GM Boris Gelfand, who said every pawn structure has a certain capacity for efficiently placing your pieces. And if you exceed this capacity, the pieces will start interfering and hampering each other, thus reducing the overall activity. You will feel this when your position becomes tight. Then you should exchange your worst pieces in order to free the remaining pieces and make them more active. So I definitely felt like that in this position, because black experiences lack of space, and I thought exchanging a pair of knights could be useful. Okay, the king goes away from the dangerous diagonal, makes total sense. Here, black also could go for the bishop pair and take the bishop on e2, but then, you're giving up a nice centralized knight just for white to be able to develop the queen. Doesn't make a lot of sense to me. Okay, so developing. Now the knight comes back. Okay, and you see white making a lot of pawn pushes, and you know that every pawn push leaves behind at least one weakness. And you know what they say, if you have a choice between moving a piece or a pawn in the opening, then you should most probably develop the piece. Okay, so black develops. Now castling kingside feels a bit awkward because white can open the f-file. They have the pair of bishops which are pointed to the king side. It could be dangerous, so I thought let me not castle yet. Okay, so this takes under control the b5 square, doesn't allow the knight to come and kick the queen away from c7. Okay, and here I played pawn push myself, which actually I really liked it, because if white pushes the pawn up to c4, then that gives the b4 square for my knight, and also it leaves a huge weakness on d3. White took, I took with the knight. Now the only way to get rid of the knight is to exchange it for the white's knight, which will mean that again white will have to lose a couple of moves, or to give the dark square bishop. So I think the knight is placed well on d4 for the moment. Okay, so white is attacking the knight. I'm placing the bishop nicely on c6, and you can see it's better placed than on d7 because it's looking to the white king. Okay, now I took with the rook here, because again white doesn't have a dark square bishop to kick the rook away from there, and if you want to do it with the knight, then you'll have to spend a couple of moves. And now this is a good move. It's a nice move. It prepares a nice outpost, an arguably nice outpost for the knight, because it can't be kicked away from b6, but at the same time it's not really the center. So the queen comes back, attacking the pawn, and also if I would come to e7, then the knight would come to b6, and then I'll have to move the queen again. So that's why here. And now, actually this is not a really good move, because white can, yes, this does threaten checkmate in one move on g2, but the bishop can come to f3, and after that exchange the bishop on c6. So yeah, I did overlook this idea. However, white plays well, white is just defending against the checkmate in this way, which is a bit passive. Also, this gives away the pawn on f4. Okay, so now the knight is attacking the queen. Queen is taking another pawn. Okay, so this one, I actually need to stop here again, because this is a very instructional moment and also a funny moment. Here I could have just won in 2 moves, and I don't know, if you want to have a look, then you can pause the video and check it out, and if not, I will just tell you. I could have moved the rook to h4, and whatever white does, it's just unstoppable checkmate. So imagine the rook being on h4. If white plays h3, then the rook just takes the pawn on h3 and is checkmate, because the pawn on g2 is pinned. And if the rook will step away, let's say to f1 or to e1, then the queen will just take on h2, and that will be checkmate. Okay, I didn't see that. So, okay, I castled, and now my opponent is like, okay, I give you another chance to spot that. I didn't even think in that direction, so I didn't play that move. Okay, instead I played queen to g5. But let's stop here for a moment. And I was asking myself, do I really feel bad missing 2 times such a checkmate? And actually no. And there's a couple of reasons why. So first of all, this game was definitely worth the play after the checkmate was missed. Because the advantage was never lost, the initiative was never handed over to the other side. There was a nice queen sack, and who doesn't like a nice win, even without the lady on the board, in this fortress kind of style, never allowing the other side any chance of counterplay. Plus, when you're much better still after you missed a checkmate, that means the position did not depend on you finding the checkmate, but you genuinely played well up to that point. I would compare it to the feeling that you get when you lose on time, just to find out that you were never worse and the time was the only factor. In both cases, you feel good about your chess skills. Second, we're not computers to always spot the best moves, and this is great. Because if you think about it, the nature of chess is artistic and not necessarily needs to be played with the highest accuracy. And third, this is actually good news for players who miss an early checkmate and still went on and won, because this proves that the position was understood and played right nevertheless, even though the checkmate was missed. Okay, so let's go on. Bishop is coming back to f1. It's not really a pleasant sight to look at white's position, because the rook is trapped, the king is in the corner, doesn't have any initiative. So let's see what happens next. Pawn takes, and this also frees up the square on c5 for the bishop to attack the pawn and the rook on g1 and the knight on b6. Okay, so black prevents this, and now I just wanted to go into an endgame, asking for a queen trade, because it's looks like it's won for black. It's it's just a matter of simplifying the position, and if you win in 5 moves, and if you win in 25 moves, nevertheless you win. Okay, so queen goes away, and this is actually a nice idea by white. And let's see what is it all about. Rook takes, and now the rook comes to g3, spotting that g7 square. For example, this would happen, and then if now the rook would take the bishop, then they will follow just a checkmate in 1. The queen will come all over to f7 and checkmate. But I did sacrifice my queen, as I mentioned before. Okay, and now it's time actually to again take a moment, take a pause, and try to understand what's happening on the board. So first of all, I thought like let me come up with a plan, and it's not necessarily an attacking plan because black has already the two bishops. White doesn't have any bishops to counter them and exchange them. So it's important to see that actually the pawns on the queen side are very valuable for both for black and for white, because if you imagine the b6, the b7 and the a6 pawn gone, then the a pawn would could potentially march to become a new queen, and then the situation is not so clear. So I started with doubling the rooks. It's always a good idea. And now the knight comes and attacks the rook and also the bishop, so the rook comes with a counter attack on the queen. Okay, and now I need to explain also the purpose of this move. So the queen wisely comes to f1, attacking the pawn on f7, and also if, for example, black will defend by placing the bishop on f6, blocking the way, then the knight will just take on c6, the pawn will take on c6, and then the queen will take on a6, and also that would give white a passed pawn, and for black there's no reason to allow that. So that's why I came here, because that takes away the target, the bishop on c6, and also protects the pawn on f7. Okay, now I'm attacking the knight. Okay, the bishop comes to a more active square, attacking the queen. And now again I'm doubling the rooks. Okay, creating some space in case of back rank attack by white. Now the rook is threatening to come and attack the queen, the king. So the bishop blocks, rook takes, pawn takes. Of course you can see that black has a very nice position. If they can exchange, for example, the knight, then the pawn will just march, and then the a5 pawn will be captured by black, thus eliminating any chances of counterplay on the queen side, and then white will just have to passively defend. Okay, attacking the knight, but this actually gives a chance for the bishop to come in here and take under control the h2 square. Now there's a check. You can see that this phase of the game is not so difficult. It's just an exchange of a queen for a rook, and yeah, there's nothing more to be done. I like this game, despite of it not being the most accurate. Actually, the computer shows us three blunders, and when I looked at the evaluation, it like never went into the white side, and I thought like, how does it give 3 blunders when I was never in trouble? And then I saw the 2 miss checkmate in a couple of moves, and I was like, okay, now it makes sense. So yeah, that was it, and I hope you all enjoyed the game.